An entitled woman, let's call her Karen, wrapped her hands around a royal guard's neck. Seconds later, she realized she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. Here's the story. Before we get into it, please tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Also, subscribe to the channel if you respect the Royal Guard. The summer sun beat down hard on the cobblestones in Windsor Castle's outer area. The old stones felt like hot plates, making tourists fan themselves with maps and guidebooks. Despite the sweltering afternoon heat, Guard Sergeant James Winters stood perfectly still at his post. The heavy bearskin hat and thick red tunic seemed to cause him no discomfort, a testament to his discipline. At 32, Winters wasn't just a ceremonial soldier playing dress-up. His sharp eyes had once scanned Afghan mountain passes for danger. His hands, now holding a ceremonial rifle perfectly still, had once pulled injured comrades to safety under fire. The two medals pinned discreetly on his chest told a story of bravery most passing tourists didn't notice. Today seemed like any other day on duty, a mix of camera flashes, curious children, and respectful onlookers. Tourists from all over the world gathered in the courtyard, their excited chatter a background noise Winters had long learned to ignore. Most visitors kept a polite distance, happy to admire the living symbol of British history from afar. But as the afternoon crowd shifted, one woman's voice cut through the pleasant buzz, sharp as broken glass. "Excuse me, some of us have places to be." The sea of tourists parted reluctantly as Patricia Holloway pushed her way through. Designer sunglasses sat perched on her carefully highlighted hair. Her expensive blouse, despite its quality, showed dark patches of sweat as she shoved forward, complaining loudly. "This heat is absolutely unacceptable. Don't they know who pays their salaries?" Winters didn't move a muscle. His gaze stayed fixed forward, just as it had for the last 3 hours of his shift. But something in the air shifted, that subtle tightening of atmosphere that experienced soldiers recognize before trouble starts. Patricia Holloway stopped directly in front of Guard Sergeant Winters, her leather handbag swinging dangerously close to his polished boots. "You there?" She addressed him like she was talking to a waiter who'd got her order wrong. "I need directions to the state apartments, and I need them now. We've been walking in circles for 20 minutes. Winters remained motionless, his discipline holding firm against the direct address. His training was clear. Maintain position, eyes forward, no interaction with the public unless there was a real security threat. "Hello? Are you deaf?" Patricia snapped her manicured fingers inches from his face. "I know you people can talk when you want to. I'm a taxpayer, and I'm asking you a simple question." Her voice carried across the courtyard, making several nearby tourists turn and stare. A mother gently guided her children away from the scene unfolding. From the edge of the crowd, a man in his 60s watched with the careful assessment of someone used to public confrontations. Martin Davies, a retired Metropolitan Police Inspector with 30 years on the job, recognized the signs of a situation about to get out of hand. His trained eye noted the guard's perfect composure, even as Patricia's behavior became more and more provocative. "Look at him, just standing there," Patricia announced to the onlookers, her voice getting louder with every word. "What exactly are we paying for? Decorations?" She turned back to Winters, whose face remained impassive. "Is this really your job, standing around like a mannequin while visitors get lost?" A young American couple exchanged uncomfortable glances. "Ma'am?" The husband tried cautiously. "There are information guides over there who can help you." He pointed towards a uniformed castle staff member near an entrance. "I don't need your help!" Patricia shot back without looking at him. "I need this so-called guard to do his job." She stepped even closer to Winters, deliberately invading the personal space most visitors naturally respected. The smell of her expensive perfume mixed with sweat hung heavily around her. "Do you even speak English? Or are you just hired because you can stand still and look pretty? Davies shifted his position slightly, moving to where he could better see both the guard and the increasingly aggressive woman. His years dealing with public disturbances had taught him to spot the dangerous mix of entitlement and anger. He watched as Patricia's hands began to gesture more wildly, her designer bracelet flashing in the sun with each sharp movement. "This is ridiculous," she declared, pulling out her phone. "I want to speak to whoever's in charge of these toy soldiers. There should be someone useful standing here, not just decoration." Throughout all this, Winters remained a picture of military discipline. His eyes stayed fixed on a point in the distance, his posture unchanged since he started his shift. But behind that mask of ceremonial stillness, years of combat experience had his senses on high alert, professionally assessing the escalating threat. "You know what I think?" Patricia's voice grew louder, clearly playing to the reluctant audience gathering around her. "I think this whole guard thing is just an elaborate trick to get tourist money. They're not real soldiers. They're just actors hired to stand around in these ridiculous costumes." A few feet away, Davies saw a castle attendant speaking quietly into a radio, no doubt alerting security. Good, he thought. They're aware. But the retired police inspector knew from experience how quickly situations like this could blow up before help arrived. Patricia circled Winters like a predator sizing up prey, her designer heels clicking on the old cobblestones. "Look at this hat," she sneered, gesturing at the guard's bearskin cap. "What century do they think this is? And that gun, I bet it's not even real." The contempt in her voice was thick, each word meant to provoke a reaction. An elderly Japanese tourist lowered his camera, his face troubled. He turned to his wife and whispered something. They moved away from the scene, the woman shaking her head disapprovingly. One by one, families with the children started drifting to the edges of the courtyard, parents clearly uncomfortable with the spectacle. "Ma'am?" A young woman in a university sweatshirt stepped forward hesitantly. "These guards are actual soldiers. They—" "Mind your own business," Patricia snapped, not even bothering to turn around. "If he's a real soldier, let him prove it by doing something other than standing there like an idiot." She moved even closer to Winters, her face inches from his. Her voice dropped to a taunting whisper that still carried in the tense silence that had fallen over the immediate area. "What's wrong, soldier boy? Cat got your tongue? Or are you just trained to follow orders like a good little puppet?" Davies watched as Patricia's body language became increasingly aggressive, the tightening of her shoulders, the forward lean, the way her hands kept clenching and unclenching. Classic sign someone was about to get physical, he recognized from his years on the force. His hand instinctively moved towards the pocket where his police ID used to be, before he remembered he was retired, just another tourist with no authority. "You people think you're so special," Patricia continued, her voice taking on an ugly tone, "with your fancy uniforms and your precious traditions. But you're nothing. Just a relic from a time that's long gone. A joke that nobody finds funny anymore." She turned to address the crowd directly now, arms spread wide dramatically. "Don't you all see it? We're standing here in the heat, paying outrageous ticket prices to look at this mannequin." A teenager who had been filming the incident slowly lowered his phone, looking uncomfortable. Davies caught his eye and gave a small shake of his head, silently telling him not to encourage her. The boy nodded slightly and stepped back. Patricia, increasingly frustrated by failing to get a reaction from Winters or real support from the onlookers, turned back to the guard with renewed determination. Her voice dropped to a dangerous purr, the kind experienced officers like Davies instantly recognized as the calm before the storm. "You think you're better than me, don't you?" she hissed, her face flushed with more than just the summer heat. "Standing there all high and mighty like you're something special. Well, I've got news for you, soldier. You're nothing. You exist to serve people like me. Your salary comes from my pocket, and I think it's time you earned it." Patricia's shadow fell across Winter's spotless uniform as she planted herself directly in his path, blocking his line of sight. The afternoon sun cast her silhouette across his polished buttons, a temporary stain on the perfect red tunic. The courtyard had become unnaturally quiet, the usual cheerful buzz of tourists replaced by the tense silence of people witnessing something about to go wrong. "I demand that you acknowledge me!" Patricia's voice had taken on a shrill edge that experienced security personnel recognize often comes just before things turn physical. "Do you understand? I pay your wages. My taxes keep this whole charade running, and you will show me the respect I deserve." Davies had started moving forward through the crowd with the practiced ease of someone who had broken up countless public disturbances. His retirement hadn't dulled his instincts. Patricia's body language was setting off every alarm bell from his 3 decades of police work. The tightened jaw, the forward-leaning stance, the hands that couldn't stay still. All classic signs someone was about to cross the line from verbal abuse to physical assault. "Ma'am!" he called out, his voice still carrying the natural authority of his former job. "Perhaps we should stay out of this." Patricia snarled without turning around, her attention fixed entirely on Winters. "This is between me and this toy soldier." Her handbag slipped from her shoulder, landing on the cobblestones with a thud that seemed to emphasize her rising anger. Winters remained motionless, his training holding firm. But those who looked closely, as Davies did, might have noticed a subtle change in his eyes, a slight tightening around his mouth. Not fear, but the heightened awareness of a combat veteran recognizing a threat and assessing it. "You think you're so superior, don't you?" Patricia's voice had dropped to a dangerous whisper as she leaned in even closer. "Standing here in your costume, looking down on all of us regular people. What makes you special? What gives you the right to ignore me?" A child's voice broke the tension for a moment. "Mummy, why is that lady being mean to the guard?" before being quickly hushed and guided away. The movement seemed to make Patricia even more agitated. Her breathing had become noticeably heavy, her expensive blouse rising and falling with each aggressive breath. "This is public property," she continued, her finger now jabbing the air inches from Winter's chest. "I have every right to be here, and you have an obligation to assist visitors. It's literally your only job." Each word was spat out with venomous precision, spit flying from her lips as she worked herself into a fury. Davies was only feet away now, close enough to see the slight whitening of Winter's knuckles on his ceremonial rifle, the only outward sign the guard was registering the escalating threat. The retired inspector opened his mouth to intervene again, but Patricia's next move happened too quickly for anyone to stop. "Look at me when I'm talking to you!" she shrieked, her hand suddenly shooting out to grab the front of Winters's tunic. The red fabric bunched between her fingers, centuries of tradition crumpled in her grip. A collective gasp rose from the witnesses as she yanked downward, trying to force the guard to acknowledge her. Winters shifted his weight almost imperceptibly. Not enough to break position, but enough to keep his balance against the unexpected assault. His eyes remained fixed forward, his discipline holding against what was now clearly a physical attack. "This is assault!" Davies called out sharply, closing the distance. "Ma'am, you need to step back immediately." But Patricia was beyond reason, beyond social rules, beyond anything but the rage of someone not used to being ignored. "You will respond to me!" she hissed, her face twisted with anger. And then, in a move that seemed to shock even herself, her hands flew up towards Winter's neck. Her fingers closed around his throat, manicured nails digging into the skin above his collar. The attack was clumsy, driven more by blind rage than any real plan to harm, but it crossed a line that no amount of tradition or ceremony could excuse. Winter's eyes flickered, the first real movement he'd made, as Patricia tried to tighten her grip. "How dare you stand there like you're made of stone?" she spat, her voice strangled with effort as she tried to hold on to his neck. "I'll make you pay attention. I'll make you respond." The crowd erupted in shocked shouts. A woman screamed. Someone yelled for security. Davies lunged forward, his police training kicking in automatically. But he was still several steps away when Winters finally moved. For those watching, it was like seeing a statue spring to life, not with jerky uncertainty, but with the smooth confidence of extensive combat training. One moment, Winters was the perfect image of ceremonial stillness. The next, his free hand had moved with precision, learned through years of close combat drills. Patricia's eyes widened in shock as her attack was stopped before it had truly begun. Her moment of imagined power vanished like morning mist under the summer sun. The guard she had dismissed as mere decoration was suddenly, undeniably, a soldier. Winter's movement was efficient, precise, and controlled, exactly what you'd expect from a decorated combat veteran. His left hand came up in a textbook defensive move, breaking Patricia's grip on his throat without using excessive force. In the same fluid motion, his right hand kept perfect control of his ceremonial weapon, never compromising its position or using it in his defense. The tables turned so quickly that many onlookers barely saw how it happened. Patricia found herself immobilized, not by brute strength, but by technical skill. Her wrist was caught in Winter's grip at exactly the angle that stopped further aggression without causing injury. The hold wasn't painful, just restraining, the perfect example of professional control in the face of an unprovoked attack. "Ma'am." Winters spoke for the first time, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who had commanded soldiers in far more dangerous situations. "You will step back, now." The sound of his voice. Calm, measured, completely different from Patricia's shrieking rage, seemed to stun the crowd into silence. Even Patricia herself froze for a moment, her expression flashing from anger to surprise to indignation in quick succession. You can't touch me!" she sputtered, trying to pull her arm free and finding she couldn't break the guard's perfect control. "Do you know who I am? I'll have your job for this." "What you have done," Winters continued in the same even tone, "is assault a member of Her Majesty's Armed Forces while on duty. This is a criminal offence." Each word was delivered with perfect clarity, neither rushed nor emphasized, simply stated as undeniable fact. "Security has been called. You will remain where you are until they arrive." Davies had reached them now, his experienced eye assessing Winter's hold with professional approval. "Well handled, Sergeant," he said quietly, showing his retired police ID with his free hand. "Former Met Police Inspector Davies, happy to provide a witness statement when needed." Winters acknowledged him with the slightest nod, his attention never fully leaving Patricia, who had begun to realize how serious her situation was. The crowd had formed a perfect circle around them, their faces a mixture of shock, disapproval, and growing respect for the guard's controlled response. "This uniform," Winters continued, addressing Patricia but letting his voice carry to the onlookers, "represents more than ceremony. Every man and woman who wears it has earned the right through years of service and training. We stand guard here not as decorations but as soldiers, continuing a tradition of service that stretches back centuries." Patricia tried to interrupt, but Winters continued with the same measured tone, neither raising his voice nor letting her derail his explanation. "The rifle I carry has been modified for ceremonial use, but it is a functional weapon. The training I've received includes how to neutralize threats without excessive force, which is what you're experiencing now." Her face flushed with angry embarrassment. Patricia tried once more to free herself. "You're hurting me! Everyone can see you're hurting me!" Davies shook his head, addressing the crowd. As a retired police officer with 30 years of experience, I can confirm that the sergeant is using minimal necessary force. The hold he's applying is a standard restraint technique designed specifically to prevent injury. Winters had maintained perfect control throughout, his hold neither tightening nor loosening despite Patricia's continued struggles. "Before I took this post," he continued, "I served 2 tours in Afghanistan. The men and women who stand guard at royal residences are active duty soldiers who rotate between ceremonial duties and operational deployments. We're not actors, ma'am. We're not decorations." For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed Patricia's face as the reality of her situation began to sink in. The statue she had tried to bully had turned out to be a highly trained military professional who had responded to her assault with measured restraint, not anger. "The men I served with in Helmand Province," Winters continued, his voice taking on a subtle depth that grabbed everyone's attention, "understood the values this uniform represents: discipline, duty, respect. The same values that prevent me from using more force than necessary, even when someone attempts to choke me while I'm performing my duties." 2 uniformed security personnel were pushing through the crowd now, their radios crackling. Winters acknowledged them with a slight nod, but kept addressing Patricia, whose struggles had finally stopped as the weight of the consequences began to settle on her. "You asked what makes us special," he said, his eyes meeting hers directly for the first time. "It's not the uniform, it's not the ceremony. It's the understanding that we stand for something larger than ourselves, the same principles that ensure your right to visit these grounds safely, to voice your opinions freely, even to make the serious error in judgment that you've made today." As security reached them, Winters smoothly handed Patricia over to their custody. His movement was so fluid it looked almost choreographed. He stepped back, resuming his ceremonial position with such precision it seemed he had never moved at all, except for the slight redness around his collar where Patricia's fingers had briefly dug in. "This woman attempted to choke me while I was on duty," he reported to the security officers, his voice returning to the clipped, professional tone of military communication. "Former Inspector Davies can provide a witness statement, as can numerous other visitors." Davies stepped forward, his posture automatically straightening in the presence of official authority. "The sergeant showed remarkable restraint in his response," he confirmed, "textbook handling of the situation." Throughout it all, Winter's dignity remained untouched. The ceremonial uniform was unwrinkled, despite Patricia's assault. His bearing returned to the perfect posture expected of the Queen's Guard. The contrast between his composed professionalism and Patricia's disheveled, flustered state couldn't have been clearer. "This is absurd!" Patricia's voice had lost its commanding edge, taking on the defensive whine of someone starting to realize they've made a huge mistake. "He attacked me. I was just asking for directions, and he grabbed me." The security officers exchanged glances, clearly not buying her version of events. "Ma'am, we have multiple witnesses, including a retired police inspector," the senior officer replied calmly. "Castle security cameras will have recorded the entire incident." Around them, several tourists had already stepped forward, offering their accounts to the second security officer. "She grabbed his throat," a German visitor explained, his English careful but clear. "He only defended himself. Very professional." Patricia's gaze darted around the courtyard, searching for sympathy but finding none. The crowd that had witnessed her assault now watched her face the consequences with the silent judgment of a jury that had already made up its mind. Children peered around their parents' legs, wide-eyed at the real-life lesson in actions and consequences playing out. "You don't understand!" Patricia tried again, her voice cracking slightly. "These guards are public servants. They're supposed to help visitors. I was just trying to get his attention." Davies stepped closer, his voice carrying the weight of 3 decades in law enforcement. "Attempting to choke someone is not getting their attention, ma'am. It's assault. In my professional opinion, Sergeant Winters showed exceptional restraint. 2 uniformed police officers had arrived now, summoned by castle security. As they approached, Patricia's face drained of color. The reality of her situation finally hit home. This wasn't going to be sorted out with a complaint to management or an angry online review. This was heading towards criminal charges. "Patricia Holloway," the female officer began after speaking briefly with security. "You are being detained on suspicion of assaulting a member of the armed forces in the execution of their duty. You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defense if you do not mention when questioned something which you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence." As Patricia was led away, her earlier arrogance completely gone, Winters remained at his post. His return to ceremonial stillness wasn't an act. It was a demonstration of the discipline Patricia had so badly mistaken for weakness. The only visible sign of the confrontation was the slight redness at his throat, already fading in the late afternoon sun. The crowd lingered a moment longer, their view of the guards forever changed by what they'd seen. Many now looked at Winters with new respect, understanding that beneath the ceremonial uniform stood a professional soldier whose discipline went far beyond standing still for hours. A family approached the edge of the allowed area, keeping a respectful distance. The father, clearly ex-military judging by his stance, offered a subtle nod of appreciation. Winters acknowledged it with the slightest change in his eyes, a moment of silent understanding between those who knew the true meaning of service. Davies paused before leaving, watching as Winters resumed his watch with unwavering vigilance. The afternoon sun caught the brass buttons on his uniform, no longer a costume in the eyes of those who had witnessed his response, but the symbol of something timeless and vital, discipline serving something greater than oneself. "I served 30 years enforcing the law," Davies remarked to a nearby American couple who had seen the whole thing. "And I've rarely seen such perfect control under provocation. Remember this the next time someone dismisses these guards as ceremonial. They're soldiers first. Always." The couple nodded thoughtfully, the husband's camera lowered respectfully instead of raised for a photo. Some moments deserve to be remembered, not just captured. Some lessons better absorbed than recorded. As the day's shadows stretched across the ancient cobblestones, Winters maintained his post with the same perfect composure he had shown before Patricia's assault. To newly arriving visitors, he looked exactly like what Patricia had mockingly called him, a living statue, a ceremonial figure, a tourist attraction. But to those who had witnessed his response, he represented something far deeper, the living embodiment of discipline tempered by restraint, of power governed by principle, of tradition alive with purpose. What we saw today in that Windsor Castle courtyard was more than just an entitled woman learning a hard lesson about respect. It was a powerful reminder of what these ceremonial guards truly stand for, not decorative figures standing still for photos, but trained professionals embodying centuries of tradition, service, and disciplined restraint. In a world where getting what you want instantly often matters more than patience, where disrespect for tradition is sometimes mistaken for being modern, the quiet dignity of these guards offers a balance, a living reminder that some values are timeless. Sergeant Winters' response to Patricia's assault showed something profound about real strength. It doesn't need to shout to be powerful. It doesn't need to dominate to be effective. What would you have done in Sergeant Winters' position? Faced with such provocation, would you have kept such perfect restraint, responding only when absolutely necessary, and even then with measured control? It's worth thinking about how much stronger our communities might be if we all handled conflict with similar discipline. And perhaps more importantly, how do we teach respect for institutions and traditions today? Is it through punishment when lines are crossed, or through better education about why these traditions matter?